What up guys, good morning. So today I have another review, but real quick some updates. We now have Acadian Clay Pomade and First Hand Supply Co's water-based pomade now available on the approved list. In regards to the discounts and the promotions page, we have added a few new brewers, so go ahead and check that out. Basically the Pomp, all caps, always save money, including the brewer we're looking at today. Basically just available to you guys as long as you guys buy direct and support their small businesses. Okay, so today we'll be reviewing Anchors Aweigh Courage Clay. Basically, Anchors Aweigh used to be called Anchors Hair Company, name change there, and Courage Clay is the clay they released. I'm actually unsure. It's been quite a while now. It's not a new product to the market, but it's new to us. This would be the first time we're looking at it, and so it is another clay. And it's always been really interesting in my head about kind of what would happen if you added a clay to like the Anchors like water-based like product, because they have a very unique formula, something that's very rare, beautifully creamy. And so what happens when you add a clay to that? And that's what we'll be looking at today, and we'll be kind of really paying attention to. But of course, look at the jar. So this is it right here, Anchors Aweigh Courage Clay Vegan Matte Hair Clay. This is a 4-ounce jar. It looks like it's glass, but it's actually a plastic jar. Anchors Aweigh typically uses plastic jars. You'll see certain brands kind of opt between the two, benefits, ups and downs to either. You have a label on top, which is the Courage Clay kind of design work. White, a metal lid, more design work on the face as well, the same thing. You have ingredients and directions on the back, and clear vinyl label. Opening it up, which you can already see the product through the clear jar, but to give you guys like a clear picture of it, like it's a very creamy like look. It looks like an Anchors product. Anchors product has a nice aspect in that it's always creamy. The consistency is unbelievable. And yeah, so go ahead and start using it. The smell of this pomade, when I first smelled it at least, it really reminded me of the old like rail cars, like that gel pomade smell, which was actually a very nice like cologne-esque smell. I know the official scent is like a sweet tobacco scent, like cedar, but like, I mean, I would best describe it as a cologne with this kind of like, definitely like this sweet, tarty, like kind of like hint to it, but overall like a very pleasing scent. And of course, scooping out the product, it is as creamy in regards to the consistency as any of the other like Anchors products. What you'll notice as you apply it though is that you feel a bit more of like the grip or like a grittiness, which is where that clay comes into play. But of course, consistency is just as smooth out of the jar as like the Teddy Boy Matte or the Teddy Boy Original. And so kind of what we're expecting is that like with the Anchors products, you never really expect the strongest product in the world. You expect a very nice consistency and kind of like a balancing feature, something that's very like easy to use on the daily. But kind of what I've noticed with like the dry matte is that because of the clay, it brings out a little more of the grittiness, which then of course also brings out like the hold a little more. And we'll kind of validate and verify that once we start styling. But so we took in basically like 3 good licks of pomade, and we should be good to go ahead and style like a nice loose and like textured pomp. But of course we'll go ahead and start off by slicking everything back. So combing it through, you will notice the difference between the Courage Clay and any of the other like Teddy Boy products, because like with the Teddy Boy Original on the mat, it was like a very smooth like kind of like movement back, and the hairs would basically kind of catch onto the comb and then basically smooth them back with the stroke. But with the Courage Clay, you see a little more grittiness. The hair doesn't really stick as much to the comb, and you get that little like clay like feel as you comb it back. But anyway, that's a small detail. Go ahead and start styling now. And so go ahead and call that done. And what we really see is something that is very kind of a hybrid between a clay and a matte paste. The reason why I say that is because, like, if we think back to something like the Baxter clay or Arcadian clay, something back between that spectrum, like the clay provides a lot of texture and it still captures kind of like loose hairs, and what you get is like a pomp that has kind of on the larger side of like texture, kind of like more coarse looseness. Now with a matte paste and more of a textured paste, at least how I describe it is, or how I see it, is that you get like a finer texture, you get like more loose hairs, you don't really, it's not as natural, the kind of coarser texture, the coarser looseness is not as naturally occurring. And kind of that's what you get with the Courage clay. It's like a clay paste-esque in a way. Kind of upsides is that you get this like really nice like neutral matte effect, and depending on how your hair type goes, like you kind of work within that spectrum of whether you want it to be textured and kind of a little sticky at the same time, or you want to be textured and dry. And so we're pushing more towards that texture dry, because you really see that like you have what I created, like the kind of the more coarse texture, but then if you kind of notice in that whole like fast forward part, like I did have to wet my hands a little bit just to capture like the stray hairs and put them back in. But you get like a very different aesthetic, something that's still like very pleasing, very beautiful, but a different one. Is something that you have to decide whether it's your preference or not. But what we see here is something with like good shape, good volume, good texture, and kind of going back to like the different characteristics, like very creamy consistency. Applying it is very easy. You feel a greenness relative to other Teddy Boy products, but in general still a very smooth process, strangely smooth. The kind of finish is neutral matte. It's definitely pushing like towards like the matte end. The texture is both on the coarse and the fine side, and so you get that entire spectrum. It's not slick at all, so you don't really have any sort of very low amount of stickiness. The strength is definitely more present. It's probably comparable to the Teddy Boy original and like in its formulation, but the texture, the dryness of the clay really brings it out a lot more, so you feel like you have more hold this time around, which then makes the control pretty like easy to use. You want to watch out for like the fine texture coming out the clay, kind of making things a little difficult, but at the same time for clay very easy to control. But we'll see how well it survives throughout the day. We actually have a pretty calm day today. I mean, going to the dog park now, but the weather looks pretty cloudy and like boring, so should be able to survive the whole day without many issues. But we'll talk about that in a few hours, so see you guys in a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and wrap up this review. So basically, end of the day now, let's go ahead and see. Things still have like a pretty good shape. I mean, we can't get the same volume, and there's definitely some kind of like loosening up of like the shape, especially given that like this is a loose pop. As I mentioned before, I left for the day, like it was a pretty relaxed day. It wasn't like a day of running around, so this was kind of like a simulation of what you would expect from like a day in the office. And as you can see, like there is going to be some like stirring up of like the product. In regards to getting like the volume back, you can get some of it back, but it's not like some of the other products we've seen where like it's really resilient. It's not. But what you really see is that effect, that texturing effect, that kind of like paste-esque effect is really like gonna stay throughout the whole day. Kind of what this is really reminding me of is like the Lay Right Natural Matte Cream. Like this is what that cream should have been. Like this is how it should have performed, because it does not perform anything like this. And this is how it should have been. And And yeah, so I mean, endurance, like this is on, I don't want to say the light, but this is a pretty average performing in regards to like what we see with other clays. It's not a hard product at all. It doesn't harden up, it doesn't dry up, it stays basically the same. And that same is what gives you that good texture, that unique characteristic, but that sameness isn't what makes it can't make it resilient. Restyling it, you'll lose a little bit of the volume, but what you really retain is that texturing effect. You don't see any wetting of the product. Like some clays kind of lose that texturing, that dryness over time, or some get really, really dry and uncomfortable over time. This one doesn't. This one stays basically the same, which is really nice. Doesn't harden up at all. Doesn't feel greasy. Doesn't feel super dry at all. And washes out easily in one go. I mean, all the Anchors water-based products like wash out very easily off the hands, out of the hair, whatever you need. And so this product receives my seal of approval in regards to kind of how it compares to other pastes and creams. I mean, for like a clay like product where I want it to have a little more like stickiness to it, I want a little more like for me personally, I want a clay that is balancing between a little more like perfected balance between like a dry texture feel and a slightly sticky feel, so I can still style a very like good pomp and I get like a high level coarse texture. But this one is more what I would use for like a very loose, very texture, very matte type of feel times, which has started to become more often than not actually. Not the majority of the time, but the kind of the desire to style something like this has come up a lot more than it used to. And as I mentioned before, like this is what these new matte creams that have popped up in the market, they don't perform like this. This is how they should actually perform. And so if you have found success with like the Lay Right Natural Matte Cream, the Suavecito one, or any of the other like cosmetic lab cooked up ones that have been kind of popping up, like this is how they should perform. And so this is a great alternative, probably a superior one, and at a reasonable price. So hope you guys got something out of this review. Of course, we have the promo code, the Pomp, all caps, for any of the Anchors products for you guys, as always. And yeah, other than that, see you guys in another review, and take care.